What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. In today's episode, we are going to be looking back on the Colts rookies, the Colts rookie draft class in particular, and we're going to throw in maybe one guy from the undrafted class that made an impact on this team. So what we're going to do, we're going to grade them out. We did this probably a month or two ago, Derek, kind of mid-season, or the second half of the season where we gave some of these rookies some grades. But here is officially the final grades that we are going to give all of these rookies that played and had some sort of impact on this roster. There's some guys that obviously didn't really do anything for this roster for various reasons, whether it be injury, whether it be they just weren't a factor in this team and they were practice squad guys, or they didn't really make the team. So we won't really include those guys. We'll kind of just include some of the guys that played or had significant roles in some way with this team. And so, with that being said, let's start with the Colts. The first pick they had was in the second round. They took wide receiver out of Cincinnati, Alec Pierce. And it was an interesting season for Pierce, all things considered. I mean, he had some moments where he looked, like a rookie, for sure. He had some moments where he looked extremely good, and he looked like the best player out there at the wide receiver position. You look at him, and it's so hard. Like we said with Pittman as well, right? It's so hard to get a gauge on some of these receivers with literally no vertical passing attack at all. But at the end of the year, Pierce finished in 16 games with 41 catches for 593 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, Derek, considering the fact that the Colts didn't have a legit quarterback that could push the ball down the field or do it accurately, what would you give Alec Pierce's rookie grade?
Yeah, I'm going with a B-. Like you said, there's not a ton of sample size when it comes to Alec Pierce, but like you said, in the times that he was out there and the times that they actually got or tried to get Alec Pierce involved, there were several games this year where Alec Pierce was a huge factor in the Colts winning or being involved in football games. I can go back to the Denver game where he had 8 catches in that game for 80 yards. I can go back to the Jacksonville game where he had the game-winning touchdown catch. I can go back to even the Dallas game where he had 2 touchdowns in that game in the first half. I mean, Alec Pierce put on a lot of different displays this year that showed you the kind of player that he is. And like you said, his best attribute is the vertical game. And when you don't have a quarterback that can consistently throw the ball 50 yards down the field, then, it just doesn't work well in Alec Pierce's favor. It's B- because he's still got quite a bit to work on in the short game, but overall his production, some of the plays that he made definitely was key for this Colts offense. So I go B-.
Yeah, I think for me, he just about was on par with what I thought he would be. I honestly thought in certain ways he exceeded my expectations for what I thought, just because you never know with rookies, right? It took Pittman a while, his rookie season, to kind of get going. And he had Phil Rivers, who actually gave him opportunities a lot more. And the Colts had some semblance of a passing game that year. But with Pierce, it's so much harder to gauge, like I talked about. So I think B- is a good grade because he's had some moments where he looked really good. He was on pace one time to, at one point in the season to break the Colts rookie receiving record. Like he was on pace to really do that. And then obviously they went away from him, and, the passing attack just went away altogether, really, when Jeff Saturday came in. And so it's kind of like, well, I don't know how much I put that on Pierce. He's obviously has some blame in that, but I can't put a huge blame on him. So I think B-. I kind of had if I'm doing a percentage, 83% for me, around there. It's like the B to B- range for Alec Pierce. Maybe a little bit better than B-, but not quite, a full 85. So I think that's a good and fair grade for Alec Pierce. When you're talking about guys that didn't get opportunities, though, you got to talk about Jelani Woods, the next guy on this list, the tight end the Colts took this year. And, he showed you, Derek, when he got opportunities, Jelani Woods made the most of them. The only problem is he did not get, like we've said with so many players. We said with Paris Campbell. We've said with Nyheim Hines when he was here. Just did not get the opportunities. But when he did, he makes plays, man. Jelani Woods is a big play waiting to happen. He's got the physical tools, and he started to put it together, especially in the passing game. And it was really exciting to see the potential that Jelani Woods had. Despite all the bad with the Colts passing offense, Jelani Woods was probably the brightest spot in terms of the receivers with the opportunities he got. What would you give Jelani Woods? I know it's hard because he didn't get opportunities a lot, but when he did, I think he played pretty well. What grade would you give him?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm gonna end up giving him I'm really gonna give him a B plus from all things considered. You could almost go with the A minus. I think the only reason I go with the B plus is because the run blocking and the pass blocking, the blocking aspect of his game is still far to be desired. That part of the game definitely needs to improve. And I think that's something that he'll continuously improve upon with more years of being in the league and learning a few more things. But like you said, from a purely catching perspective, there was a lot of great things to be desired when it came to Jelani Woods. I mean, it just stinks that he really was only getting an average. I mean, when you look at it from a total season perspective, was only getting, an average of 2.5 targets a game. And that just kind of was one of those things. I mean, early in the season, he wasn't getting any targets. So, we saw him come into this role and, he was at several times in games, he was really the only spark offensively for this team. And there was multiple times where he did a lot of great things. I mean, we don't win the Kansas City game without his 2 catches for 2 touchdowns. We don't win the Jacksonville game with the several great catches that he had. The Steelers game had 8 catches for 80 something yards. I mean, the guy has definitely got a lot going for him. And it's crazy that he's only been a tight end. He was only a tight end for a year before coming into the league, doing what he's doing now. I mean, you can only imagine another year or 2 in the league, what Jelani Woods can do with his body frame. I mean, very, very scary player. So I go B plus again. If we saw more production, not due to his fault, really, I would have graded this in the A category. But with the blocking and the production that we did get, I'll give this a solid B plus.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Jelani Woods, B plus, A minus, no question about it. He suffered from some drops at times, but I think all things considered, the plays that he made far outweighed the drops and some of the issues that he had, as any rookie will have, And so I think that's a solid grade because the dude just made plays. He changed games for you. Unfortunately, our offense was so bad you couldn't take advantage of it most of the time. But he definitely is a guy that can be a game changer for.
Right.
And that's exciting in itself with the rookie you're going to bring in. He's going to have a 6'7" target at tight end, a guy that he can just give opportunities to. That is exciting right there. So Jelani Woods has definitely shown a lot, I think. And I think I don't have a lot of questions about Jelani. It's just like, can he handle more workload? I think he can. I think he's shown he can. But if you continue to go to him next year, what's he going to look like? I'm looking forward to that because he is such a raw prospect. I mean, this dude scored a 10 out of 10 raw athletic score, Derek. That is unheard of, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's that has never happened before. Right. In the history of tight ends, there's never been a more talent or more athletically gifted tight end than Jelani Woods.
Yeah, so it's exciting in itself that he's now going to have a full offseason in the Colts system. I know they're going to probably get a new system on offense and stuff, but I really hope that whoever the Colts bring in to run this offense, via coordinators and also quarterback, I really hope Jelani Woods is at the center of what they try to do offensively because I really think he's a guy that's going to really get better. And I think the same is true with Alec Pierce, too. These guys were only rookies. We have to remember that, right? These guys were raw. They were learning on the fly a little bit, and they have now a full year to look and see what can I improve on. And so I think the sky's the limit for both these guys. And I'm really excited. The fact that now the Colts have 2 guys that have a lot of talent, showed a lot of potential in year 1, and that can really help pair with this rookie quarterback they're going to bring in. So love both those guys. And then the last guy on this offense as well that the Colts took, in the first 3 rounds, you got to talk about Bernhard Ryman, man. I mean, wow. I mean, talk about just a trial by fire season for Bernhard Ryman. But you look at it, all things considered, Ryman has come out and he has looked like the guy that can be the potential left tackle of the future for the Colts. Had his moments. Chris Ballard acknowledged, the same thing in his press conference, but it was enough for Ballard to feel really excited about the future at left tackle with Bernhard Ryman at the helm. I mean, Derek, we have to keep in mind, similar to some of these other players we've talked about and we'll talk about, Ryman is so new to the position. The fact that he's so new to this position at tackle and he's playing at this high level now, in his rookie season, that's exciting for year two. And the Colts have been they've struggled so much, right? So much to find a tackle after Costanza retired. They've struggled to find it. They tried Eric Fisher, tried Matt Pryor, didn't work. Bernhard Ryman comes in, and he has done exactly what the Colts hoped he'd do. And I think there's a lot of optimism going in. So I'm going to actually give a grade here first. I think it's gone up from when we talked about it last. I'm going to give Bernhard Ryman, considering what he had to do, the situation that was not ideal. Ryman had to face some of the best edge rushers in the NFL, and he came out, I think, better for it. So I'm going to give him a B+. I'm going to give Ryman a B+.
I'll agree with you on that. I think that, we can overlook the first 8 weeks of the season when it comes to this and just kind of look at where he is now. I think they said from midway through the season to now, Bernhard Ryman was actually one of the top tackles in the NFL at pass blocking. So, I mean, to think of that, to be a rookie who has been in that position for less than 2 years worth of experience and to now be one of the better left tackles in the NFL at a certain point in the year. I mean, that shows you just how quick that kid adapted to the situation that he had to be thrust into.
Yeah, I actually have the stat right. I have the stat right here, just because you mentioned it.
Yeah.
From JJ Stankovitz, Colts.com. Bernhard Ryman re-entered the Colts starting lineup at left tackle in week 9. From weeks 9 to 18, he had a 76.5 PFF pass grade that ranked 21st out of 81 tackles. And that's a minimum of 100 pass blocking snaps. And he faced really, really elite talent at defensive end, at the pass rush department.
Yeah.
Guys like, Mack, Parsons, Lawrence, Hightower, Jones, and so many other guys he had to face. It wasn't like he was facing, these no-name guys. He was facing really elite and really good edge rushers, and Ryman held his own, which is encouraging, right? And and Braden Smith, I want to give an honorable mention here to Braden Smith, just a shout out to him. He had one of the hardest assignments all year, and he was phenomenal. After he started off, he struggled, but he really turned it on too. So I think the Colts, if this can continue, Derek, they have a really good tackle situation, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll feel great for the next 5 years with the tackles if Bernhard Ryman continues to improve like we've seen, and if Braden Smith gets back to the form that we know him capable of. Then the tackle situation in Indy will at least be there for at least the next 5 years, which is great because then you can start focusing on building up that middle. But for Bernhard Ryman, I'll give a B+. Again, the situation he was thrust into, no doubt that he had some growing pains early on, but how he finished the year, very, very nice sign of things to come.
Yeah. So you think about it, the Colts have 3 young pieces on the offense. As bad as the offense was, there's some building blocks there, Derek, in this draft, which is great. You got 3 building blocks, and that's exciting. So, all right, let's move on to the final 3rd round pick. This is the guy, Derek, we'd hyped up because the Colts did something you don't usually do. They traded up and gave up a decent amount of capital to go get a safety, right? They went and got their guy, Nick Cross. He started week 1, barely saw the field the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And he was actually got surpassed by the other guy we'll talk about, Rodney Thomas, 7th round pick, and really didn't do a whole lot. He was an inactive. He was a healthy scratch the last game of the season, Derek.
Which is really odd. It's just really odd from a personnel perspective, but we can talk about that for another day.
Exactly. So I'll say this before we get into the grade. Nick Cross has all the talent in the world. He has all the opportunity in the world to turn this thing around in year 2. Absolutely does. But for 2022, I'm going to give him a D because the expectations were here, Derek, with Nick Cross. And it didn't go anywhere near that. He didn't even see the field, pretty much the majority of the season.
Yeah.
So, what was the case for why he was so involved early into training camp, into everything, the preseason, and then he just was not a factor the rest of the year? Why? Why is that the case? I don't know the answer. It just was very bizarre how it just went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, it's very odd to say the least. I hope that he'll figure it out. And like you said, the talent's there. I don't even really know what kind of grade to give because there's really just there's not really a building block to grade on because like you say, you could grade it on the expectation that we all set for him. But clearly, I mean, he just needs to catch up to speed on, the NFL game itself. And clearly, Rodney McLeod and Rodney Thomas had a better grip of their assignments and how to handle that situation better than Nick Cross did. Nick Cross is a far better athlete than both of them, but at the end of the day, athletes don't always equivalent to good football players. So at the end of the day, he needs to work on it. Don't know if I can really give a grade at the moment with that one. I mean, if we're going building block as a D, then I'll go with that as well. But yeah, just hope that next year we'll get to see Nick Cross a little bit more, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so with what they, where they took him and how they were hyping him up. There's still a lot of optimism about Nick Cross's development. So maybe this is a good thing for him. Maybe this is a great humbling season for him to just sit back, not feel the pressure of having to be a starter or really contributing on the defense and learning from Rodney McLeod and learning from Julian Blackmon. Maybe this is going to be a great thing. And, maybe depending what they do with McLeod, maybe he's able to, get more of an opportunity next year. We'll see. But yeah, I think right now it's just based off of the expectations and how the Colts were hyping him up, did not even scratch that. So, all right. The other guy that's kind of tricky, and I debated putting him on here, but Eric Johnson was kind of the reserve defensive lineman, and there really wasn't a whole lot of expectation. So I'm just going to go with the C here because, he did basically what we asked him to do. And I even hesitate to give him a grade just because it's it's a fifth round pick, and he didn't really expect him to come in and light the world on fire or anything like that. But he still did play a role in this team. So, what do you give him? What kind of grade do you give him here? Because I don't really know what to give him.
Yeah, I mean, C minus. I mean, like we said, I mean, he was a guy that that came in originally and was a guy that was thrust into the defensive rotation, but you just never really saw anything from Eric Johnson. You saw his name pop up a few times in training camp, but outside of that, NFL competition just got the best of him this year. So D or C minus is the absolute best you could give Eric Johnson because there really wasn't much of a productive impact from him this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have two guys here. One more guy from this draft class that we want to talk about, and then one more undrafted free agent, just because why not? We'll throw him in. We'll talk about him. Rodney Thomas, the guy we already mentioned, the guy who played a majority of the snaps and actually finished out pretty good. I know he's probably still torn up about how that Houston game ended and how he probably should have had that interception to seal that game. But all that to say, Rodney Thomas coming in from a 7th round pick out of Yale, nobody knew what to expect. There was no expectations for him. It's will he even make the roster? Absolutely. I would even go A+. I really would.
It's an A. It's 100% an A. I mean, look, he's a 7th round draft pick out of an Ivy League school that very few people knew who the heck he was. And sure enough, Ballard and his scouts, in their infinite wisdom that somehow, some way, they find one of these guys every freaking year, Cody, and they come in and do this. And Rodney Thomas, who finished the year, with 4 interceptions on the year, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
I mean, It was 3 or
Could've had
4,
5.
one or the other. But I know, but Rodney Thomas was again one of these guys that was thrust into the rotation when Julian Blackmon went down, and Rodney McLeod had to move to strong safety, and there was not many other guys to run the free safety group. You didn't trust Nick Cross at the time, so you threw Rodney Thomas in there, and he looked like he was a pro from the minute he stepped on the football field. Like as if it wasn't hard for him at all. I mean, there were so many times. I mean, we remember the Broncos game, especially where he, lit up that game. I mean, he was everywhere. There's a couple other times that I know he was involved in a few other big plays. Kind of reminded me of, Julian Blackmon from his rookie year, right? Like we saw Julian Blackmon, and if it wasn't for Chase Young being as elite as he was that year, his rookie year, then Julian Blackmon would have won Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, that's the kind of same praise I see from Rodney Thomas. I mean, he had to come in with a group of veterans in the secondary and was clearly the youngest, one of the youngest guys on the defense altogether, and came in there and was part of the unit, and it didn't even look like he wasn't, like he looked like he was involved in everything. And it was so cool to see him do that. And I almost worry if he's going to take a step backwards because of how good he was this year, right? It's hard to repeat that because when you're a rookie, it's hard to repeat that year in and year out when you do stuff like what Rodney Thomas did this year. But yeah, it's a totally an A because, like we said again, 7th rounder, you didn't expect him to come in and be a role player right off the bat. And not only was he a role player, but he was a starter on this defense, and he was never a step behind anyone.
Nope. So, yeah, you're right. He did finish with 4 interceptions, which is just incredible when you think about it, based off of people we're not even thinking, including us, is he going to make the roster? And yes, he's going to make the roster. And not just that, he's going to make an impact. So huge. Love to see that. All right, final guy we're going to talk about, undrafted free agent, really the only one that kind of made an impact this year on this team. Dallas Flowers. Got to talk about Dallas Flowers. I mean, I just talked to him, and he finished the year, Derek, as the best kick returner per average in the NFL. And he also got some looks at corner. Now, he wasn't great at corner, I'll say that. But for an undrafted guy to come in and do what he did in the kick return department, like, to me, and finding an undrafted guy that can do that, that's a high grade for me. That's a B+ to A kind of guy that can change the game like that. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I would definitely go. I would go B, just simply due to the fact that we didn't see him until late in the season. But you're right. What the impact he made from the moment he stepped on the football field this year from a special teams perspective, he changed so many games. He changed how the games went for us in a lot of different ways. I mean, you said it was in just 6 games that he was returning kicks was, averaging 5 more yards per return than the next closest guy. And then on top of it, I mean, they said he was top 5 in total return yards on the year. And stealing with that. I mean, obviously, like I know the Colts at the back end of things were giving up a lot of points because the offense couldn't score and the defense was on the field the majority of the time. I get that. But I mean, still, he didn't play for the majority of the year. And then to still be, a premier special teams guy like that. I mean, his first kick return ever in the big leagues almost takes it to the house against Pittsburgh, man. I mean, and from that moment, you just felt like if Dallas Flowers got his hands on it, it was a potential to go big every time. And there were very few times that Dallas Flowers didn't get positive yardage on a kick return this year. So that's fantastic. It's awesome to see somebody step in and do something like that. So it's a solid B for me.
It's crazy to me that I would ever be saying this phrase, all right? And some people will probably still get upset because I understand this guy's a fan favorite, or he was a fan favorite. Did the Colts win the Nyheim Hines trade? Like, maybe they didn't win it, but did it benefit both teams? Like, because Nyheim Hines, we saw what he did, 2 touchdowns, obviously amazing. He's a great player. But the Colts got Zach Moss out of it, who just had over 100 yards, who's, in my opinion, RB2.
Yeah.
And also, it opened the opportunity for Dallas Flowers now to come in and do what he did. If Hines was still here, Flowers would have never gotten that opportunity.
No. Yeah, not at
So,
all.
like, it's crazy to even think about that because I was upset that the Colts got rid of Hines. I mean, I think we all were a little bit upset about that.
Yeah.
But, like, this could be a big thing for this Colts team. Like, you know, you get rid of that contract, you find your potential RB2, and also you find your kick and punt returner.
Yeah, and who was clearly doing better at returns right now than what Hines was doing for you in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, no disrespect to Nyheim Hines, but Hines after his rookie year was not doing really anything in the return game for Indianapolis. Dallas Flowers has already done more in that department than Nyheim Hines has done in the last 3 for the Colts.
I mean, no disrespect because we already know how great of a player Hines is and was and is still. But yeah, I mean, I think it was actually a good trade somehow, some way it worked itself out. And so I think that's just a credit to Dallas Flowers and just what he was able to do this year and the fact that he's cheap and the Colts are going to have him for a couple more years. And you don't really have to pay the guy because he's not really playing any snaps for you on defense right now. At least he wasn't this year. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it worked out. It worked itself out, all things considered. We wish Nyheim Hines the best. Hopefully, man, he can go win a Super Bowl in Buffalo this year. We'll be rooting for him. But it worked itself out, and Dallas Flowers is a big reason for that. So, all right, cool. Well, I think that'll do it for our look at the rookies, guys. Let us know your thoughts on some of the grades. Are there any other players that you throw in that maybe you wanted us to talk about with these rookies? I think we covered pretty much everybody that had some sort of impact or played some sort of role with this team, but let us know if there's anybody else you feel like we missed. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all the support. And as always, guys, go Colts.